right, hello Blazor fans. Welcome to another Blazor Power Hour. We're going to play around with the good old Blazing Pizza Workshop. Look at how it handled nullability because it's an older project. So there's going to be a lot of warnings when I turn on nullability there. But let's just go ahead and get started. It's more of an office hours today like it was last week. Still working on this whole nullability thing. And you'll see why. It'll become very apparent when I start messing around with this project. Let's see. Let's go ahead and share my screen. I don't have anything on it yet, but I need to get Visual Studio up and running, and I need to get the Blazing Pizza Workshop cloned. So I'm starting absolutely from scratch again. Welcome, Findle. Nice to see you again. It's been a while. Virtually it hasn't, but in person it's been a bit. All right, so we're going to jump into Visual Studio Preview, 2022 Preview. I also have some nice extensions here, Blazor, which is really cool by Jimmy Engstrom. You might see me mess around with that a little bit today. You can find that in the Visual Studio Marketplace. Let's see if it has been updated. There's some nice updates he just added for it. Automatically updated, so we're good to go there. Do I do this in a VM? No, I don't. I probably should. It'd probably be easier if I did, but I don't know. I always have problems with VMs. It's been a while since I've messed with VMs, so it's probably not a fair assumption that something's going to go wrong. But, you know. So let's bring the browser back over on this side, and we're going to go to aka.ms/Blazor Workshop. And I'm going to go ahead and just clone this thing. And we'll just go over to clone repo. I love the new Git tools in Visual Studio. I don't have a current copy of it, so I can just hit clone here. And we should be good to go. Layla does everything in a VM because Layla works for a company that specializes in VMs. My taskbar is clean because I use the search more than anything. So you'll see recents on here. I just go into search. It's more like a command line than it is a start bar for me. Yeah, the clone Visual Studio button never works for me in GitHub. It does like a launcher, and I have multiple versions of Visual Studio, so it picks the wrong one every time. I don't know why. It always does. I guess I don't have Visual Studio 2019 on here anymore. I think that was the real reason I never used it. Like, I'd want it to open in the latest version. It would always go into the 2019 version. So the Blazing Pizza Workshop, it's really a great workshop. It's been updated a couple times. It is a little bit behind. I know .NET 8's right around the corner. It looks like there's some pending pull requests here. Something about updating SignalR to .NET 6. So that's kind of dated, it looks like. I know they added a Blazor hybrid module request on here. It looks like C# Fritz did that. A couple bugs in here maybe. Module 6 preserving state is broken. So it looks like good old Jeff Fritz has been in here annotating things and showing where there's some issues. One of the issues that I saw hits close to home because it's literally the reason I'm writing this workshop that I'm doing. And the workshop is on nullability. And I saw there is let's see, there's an issue in here about nullability. Maybe it's on the second page. 2 pages, 41 issues here. Let's see, where is it? I know it, there it is. Support for nullable references in C# 8 Workshop. If you turn on nullability, you get this. get a bunch of warnings. So that's what we're going to go do, is see what we can actually do with that. So we're going to go over to the main solution here. This is the completed solution. I ran this earlier. It seems to run nice and quick. The first spin up is going to take a while because it's going to have to build a database out. So its start time's a little slow on the first run. So we'll go ahead and give this a run. And like I said, this first load is going to take and create the database. I always make sure that the app starts. That's the first thing I always do when I clone something. Because sometimes there's, with Blazor apps, .NET stuff, usually there's not anything that's going to go wrong because of dependencies and configuration. But if there's JavaScript stuff in there, it's like, did I run all the NPM things? Does it have other issues, SDKs missing? Before I start hacking away and trying to fight problems that weren't ones that I created. So it looks like it's running just fine. Matter of fact, we can do a little bit more here. We can add a pizza, add another one. If I go to order, I think it asks me to log in. I'm not going to create an account and all that right now. We might end up doing that in a minute anyway. Let's jump back into the app and look at the error list here. There's one thing that says there's an obsolete use of sign out session manager. This is a authentication bit that looks like it's using an older version of the API. So I'm not going to really worry about that warning right now. Matter of fact, I don't want to. Don't want to do that in case I submit it. Let's see here. Let's go over to the client. This is the web application part of the Blazor app. And let's jump into the CS proj file. Now, in the CS proj file, under implicit usings, I'm going to come up here and say I want nullable enabled. And when I do that, you're going to see a lot of warnings come up. The reason for this, and the reason I'm building a workshop on it, is because if you built a Blazor application prior to .NET 6, this was off by default. This was disabled. In .NET 6, they enabled this on project templates. So when you start migrating old Blazor code, stuff that was built in .NET 3.1 or .NET 5, .NET 5 was a really good time to build Blazor applications. And there's probably a lot of code out there that exists in .NET 5. You might be moving forward. And people might be just turning nullability off in those projects because of what you're going to see here. So if I'm going to pin this, and then I'm going to hit rebuild. And just on this simple little blazing pizza application, you will see I got 20 warnings. And this is just on the client side. There's probably some on the server side as well, or in the shared project. I should probably turn it on in shared because it's going to end up the issue is going to end up bubbling up into the shared project as well, because the shared project has a lot of like DTO type stuff in it, or data transfer objects, and just that shared kind of class structure in there. So we'll jump over there and do the same thing. And I'm going to do nullable again, enable on that. And if we rebuild again, so we got 19 errors from the client side alone. Let's see what happens when we go into shared and do build. There's another 22 errors that showed up, 23 errors that showed up in that one. So there's a lot of warnings that come up. So I could see people migrating Blazor apps from .NET 5 and beyond, or to .NET 6 and beyond, turning this off if it's not already off, just because of all the warnings. They're not that easy to fix. Some are, some aren't. Let's take a look and see what we have. A lot of them are going to be like this. In just plain class objects like this, we have a string which is a nullable type, or not a nullable type, but it's not being set to anything. So this is saying a non-nullable property name must be set to a non-nullable value when exiting the constructor. And there's a lot of context around how we're going to use this as to how we want to solve it. So on something like this, we could put in the null operator. Whoops, I put it on the wrong part. I always do that. Don't know why. Drop that on string. Make this a nullable reference type. And that error goes away. But then wherever this code was used, there's some implications on how that might affect the code that uses it. So we have to kind of look at how all these things come together before we start annotating things and deciding what they should be. And then you get into things on Blazor as well. So let's take a look, see if there's any Blazor code that has these null messages on it. Here's one that I come across a lot. HTTP client. This is a big one, really. So this is going to be where a lot of the issues are, and probably one of the more important ones to fix too. Stuff like the address, the name not being set. I mean, it's already marked required on the form, so there's going to be some validation there. That's not as much of an urgent fix for me as an HTTP call that's going unchecked. So what we're doing here is we're calling HTTP client get from JSON async. And if something were to go wrong on that call, you're going to get an exception. It's going to return null here. So you might want to put some error handling around this. It's not even in a try catch block, so it's just then going to explode. So for example, let's go ahead and throw another S on this just to make the name wrong and cause an exception to occur. And let's see what happens to the app when this page starts to load. So I'm not even really as concerned about it being null as I am the fact that there's no error handling involved at all. And there it is. The good old-fashioned... come on, search. Stop it. Keeps bringing up a search in my browser. I want my Zoom app. Zoom it exe. There we go. So I can point at stuff. Unhandled exception. So there's unhandled exceptions, whether that was caused by a null or just something else, it's a problem. So this is getting to an area where there's some issues. Let's see what else we've got here. Specials is another one. Let's see what we're doing for loading in here as well. So we're actually using null here to see if it's null, and if it's not null, we're going to do this. So that means if it is null, there's probably been an exception or something, and this whole app isn't going to work. And that's just not good practice. And I get why it's like this in the examples. This is just a simple workshop, and you can't teach like every single thing. But it's also a good learning perspective to look at this and figure out what's wrong with this practice. Another thing that you see with null in this is going to be this one here. And if I could get this to work right, I don't want to extract a component. I think I have to stop the server there. Let's see how much logic is in here. Not a lot of logic, so this will be a good example. I want to take this component and I want to, I think I have to right click on it. Here it is. Jimmy's tools here provide this. And I can say, I want to create a code behind file for, which one of these buttons does the arrow on Zoom It? I always forget. There it is. Control Shift. So create a code behind file. So if I want to create a code behind file for this, create a code behind file, and there's index.razor, and I'm going to start moving things over. So let's go ahead and drop this side by side. Maybe I can at least tackle like one nullability issue and start chipping away at some of these warnings. And one way to do that might be putting these bits of code here. Let's see what happens when we do that. All right, so I can remove my code block. And that should be okay. Let's scoot this guy over. We still have some null warnings here. Oh, we're missing some stuff. I want to take my injection stuff here and put this up at the top. And of course, you can't paste Razor code in. So we got to rewrite these. And the way they get rewritten is as a property. Hey, Blazor, Mr. Magoo. And if we rewrite these as a property, matter of fact, we could probably do these all at once. Do a get set there. There we go. So now we've got even more null warnings coming up. So in trying to fix null warnings, I just made more. But thankfully, this is a really easy one to take care of. There's a couple ways to go about this. And again, it has a lot to do with the context of what's going on in the file. This is going to be set by dependency injection. If dependency injection fails, the app can't run anyway. So it's kind of a situation where we've got this warning that it's null, but if it's null, the app's dead in the water. But we still need to satisfy the warning message. So chat room. Just real quick, just to get an idea of where people's knowledge of this lies. How would you fix this warning message? What would you do to fix this warning message? Because there's something new that was just added to fix warning messages like this one. So there's actually 2 ways to do this, maybe even 3 that would be acceptable. Smab UK's got the newest one. That is the absolute newest way to do it. So I was wondering if people knew about this yet. So that's a C#11 feature. So the required keyword. So the required keyword is a new one. Hey, Fuel Snabble. Let's jump over and actually take a look at the definition of it. This is in C#11. So in C#11, they added this required modifier. I guess it's actually, is it a modifier? Okay, it's under keywords. Good to see you, Fuel Snabble. The required modifier can be applied to fields and properties declared in a struct class, record, etc. Can't be applied to members of an interface. Explicit interface implementations can't be required. Okay. Sometimes Does it talk about the usage though? The documentation's a little iffy here. There we go. I guess this is what I was looking for. The required modifier enables developers to create types where properties or fields must be properly initialized and yet still allow initialization using object initializers, yada, yada, yada. So what this solves is you're able to mark this as required. And the reason we have that there, I mean, the way you might go about doing this in a simple class file, let's just pull that simple address class back up. One way you might want to go about doing something like this is to just create a constructor. And in the constructor, require things by putting the property here and saying string name, and then setting the name with that, and then making this a required constructor. The issue with that is things like dependency injection and other code generated functionalities don't like that. They like the parameter list constructor, so they can just new up things. And if you're doing mocking, if you're doing entity framework, if you're doing DI, all of those things really love the parameter list constructor. So they added this required modifier. And that says if you're going to new up a thing, this is a required property that needs to be set, even though there's no constructor that says, hey, you have to set this. Good old object builder could do property injection. Okay, let's see. The other way you could do these, because you know that they're coming, the values are coming from another system, is you could set it to null explicitly and then ignore the error that comes off of it. But that was prior to C#11. So C#10, you're going to do that. C#11, you're going to do that. So we set up our DI. We drop in required here. And it looks like we've got some code completion doing this for us now. So that's nice. The next one we hit is this list of pizzas. It's a non-nullable field, must be null when exiting the constructor. This one is a design decision. And as of now, in the UI portion, we check for null. And I think this check for null just gets around another error being thrown if we try to for each on a null. And again, the only way, I guess if this is loading, that will be null initially. And we're not going to write out, this stops us from hitting this exception here. So I think that's the only reason that null check is even there. On error zoom next is what we need. We need to write code that doesn't fail too. So this is setting us up for a fail, in my opinion. So if something goes wrong with getting the specials, we get an exception. And I think that's the only time we're going to get null back from this get from JSON async. Even if there are no specials, I believe the return of this is null, or sorry, empty, not null. So the only time this is null is when the page is loading. Any other time it's null, HTTP client has failed. So we could either make this nullable like this and accept the fact that we're using it to check and see if the data is loaded. But then we're not doing anything to handle any exceptions that come out of this. So that's not great. So for simplicity's sake, we could just do that and just call it a day. Right. So we could do that as well. You could use the null coalescing operator. So the first thing we need to do is make this a non-nullable value, and to do that we need to set it to a new object here. And then the only way that this will ever be null is when this HTTP client fails. So I don't want to just put a null coalescing operator here, because what that's going to do is hide the exception or hide an error. It won't hide the exception, but it could hide an error state. It's not really helping us do much but resolve the error or resolve the warning. So we can run this and it's successful. And again, I think the only time HTTP client comes back with null is if there's no data. I mean, if there's an error. I think if it's no data, it comes back as empty. Yeah, there we go. There's still an exception hitting there, because we're hitting the wrong endpoint. So we're getting, let's see, what exception am I getting when I hit a wrong endpoint? That's going to cause an actual HTTP exception. And we get value cannot be null, actually. Value cannot be null. Get from JSON async. So we are getting a null back here because this hit the wrong endpoint. It's actually, I think it's hitting the null on serialization. So because it's trying to deserialize a null value, I'm surprised it's not hitting an error page and hitting a different object, not since set to an instance of an object. It is a null reference exception, so it's still managing to hit it. Just can't quite figure out where it's hitting it. So what I'd rather do in this situation is actually like handle this error intelligently and put a try catch around it. Like that. And then we would need to take this off. And instead of setting this directly to specials, temporarily store that in results. And then we can come in here and set up. Yeah. Well, there's a couple reasons, Smab. Like, it's a workshop and it's meant to be done in like a day or two. And if you put too much best practices in, like, you're going to slog through, like, you know, the first chapter in 2 days instead of getting through like all 8 projects that it has in it. So I'm nitpicking because I'm looking for reasons to resolve these null issues. And this was also written before the nullability. So you might have come in a few minutes late. The Blazing Pizza Workshop was written in .NET Core 3. So this came out a long time ago before this feature this nullability feature was added to the language. So there's that as well. So I would put error handling around this. I still haven't found that error boundaries work really well. The error boundaries are a nice built-in feature, but they're kind of a catch-all, I guess, where they don't work well on the initialize life cycle. So error boundary, you would have to put it all the way up in the main layout portion of the application for it to actually catch the error. And then you're kind of out of the context of what's happening. So I like to do it right here still and just say bool has errors equals false. We don't have to say equals false. It initializes that false. So if it has an error, it's going to do that. So we're going to try. And if there's a retry, we might actually want to put has errors in here again. Make sure it's set to false before we start. And then if the results are null, then we'll throw a new exception there. So it'll be caught in our catch here, just to double kind of cover our bases here. If there's some kind of error that's, we could also do, instead of get from JSON async, we could just do, get JSON async and then do the deserialization in a separate step. There's a couple ways to do this as well. But I like to just catch any, if it's null and for some reason it already hasn't caught an exception, go ahead and just throw an exception. Just so you can catch it and error handle it. This just covers all of our bases. And then in here, we don't want to rethrow this exception. We want to set has errors to true, and then you want to display some message to the user that there's been an error. So it errors gracefully instead of just throwing a red or yellow banner up at the bottom of the screen. So you've got that, and then we need to finally set the pizza specials. So we'd say specials equals result I don't know what it was auto-completing, but there we go. That would handle that. And then when we come back over to, it still says it's never used. It's grayed out, even though we're setting it in several places. Accessibility modifiers required, really? And we know it's private, right? I think you get some of these weird things too. It's assigned and never read because we're going to read it in the UI. Now our null check here is obsolete. Like we don't need that anymore. So we took care of that one. And if it is in a loading state and we don't want to show, I mean, it shouldn't show anything anyway. And because this isn't null, it's not going to fail. But if we did want to show a loading screen, like that would be better than using null. We could still set up something instead of using null. Div class main UL, let's see. So the error actually occurs here, and we could put a alert, oops, class. I'm assuming we have bootstrap here, alert. We could say error occurred getting pizza specials. And then hopefully I'd have a retry button in here. We haven't got that far yet, but we're at least building infrastructure. That's actually a good one we'll look at, Smab. Thanks for reminding me. So the recommendation is to use is null rather than equals. Now, under the hood, I believe they do the same thing. Why are we still getting an exception there? That shouldn't happen. How are we still getting an exception after that? I didn't put an if statement here, though. That probably needs to happen. That's not why we're still getting an exception, but if has error, then display an error message right there. Like that. What is this exception all about? We've got DI there. We've got errors false, errors true, result, await. Actually, specials, I fixed the text too. We should actually be pulling back data. I don't know what's failing here anymore. Object not set to a instance of an object on client get order in. Okay, where's get order at? We've got remove pizza. We've got add pizza. Is that order state dot order? Is there something in order state that I broke? There's also some explicit usage of null in here. I'm not seeing a get order function. I don't like that I'm not getting a break on the error either that's occurring. That's not helping me figure this out. Let's actually run this. I know it's going to fail. And it could be because I've got some wonky state saved somewhere. Let's do inspect. Let's do application. And then inside the application here, we might have some local storage or something that has a null value that's been saved in it. And that's causing an issue for us. Reload this. I think nope. What the heck is this? All right, what's going on here? Where's this null coming from now? This is why we don't let them in the front door to begin with. They're troublemakers. It still says index.razor.cs index get order. Or it's just, is that, what? Is that just order? What is happening here? Looks like it's failing on this order. Order state equals order. We need a new order state, I think. I thought clearing the cache would do it. I think it's trying to pick up an old order. From when I open, you know what? We'll probably fix it. Let's go ahead and run it one more time. This is a state issue still. I know it for a fact. And if I do localhost in a brand new browser, let's see if we get the same error if it's successful. No. Okay, so it's not a state thing. Really? So I tried to bulletproof the code and somehow broke it completely. What is happening here? I see. The debugger's not giving me any information here either. I believe it's hitting it on this, the only thing in here called order. And I think it's trying to get the order here. It says create new order. Does this have to be nullable? Is that part of the problem? Because it is a configuring pizza. Let's see. I thought this was working before I edited anything, though. And this is where the stuff starts to spill through. Because these can be null, that has to now be null too. Let me try that and see. The problem is not breaking within the Razor code. I get this. Object not set to an instance of an object. We know it's a null reference exception. And it says at pages get order. Line 15. Line 15. And then we also, let's see, is it? Yeah, there's no line 15 there. Line 15. Yeah, so it is hitting it here. So it seems as if it's something to do with the state management that's happening in here. When it's trying to get the state, it's null and it's throwing an exception. Now, I thought I cleared local storage. I did. There's nothing in local storage. But the weird part is I thought that was working before. Maybe the thing I thought I broke was not what I actually broke. So let's see what I did change. When I did this, that was recent. I made that not null. Let's see here. Index.razor. If specials is null, so in this, I'm in the sidebar, I'm taking order pizza. I didn't change it, so let's get out of that mode. Order state. But that's if you click. I'm not clicking on that. So on the sidebar, are there any pizza orders? Okay, so order state. Is order state being properly injected? Do we have that? Who news that up? So order won't be nullable, SMAB, because it's always set here. So the order itself isn't, unless the order state's not initializing correctly. Unless order state isn't, let's see, orders, I wish I could get this to break. Let's try setting a breakpoint, see if it'll fire off. Just to make sure dependency injection is working. I can't set a breakpoint in a Razor file. I can here. See if it gets that far. I doubt it does, though. I want to see if my dependencies are actually being injected. I did change DI, but it shouldn't have mattered. I just moved where it was defined. Yeah, I'm hitting the error before it gets that far. And there's something in this order that is causing this exception. So I have order state here. It's being set. And then order is a shortcut method to the order object here. And it looks like it's just failing on the getter. Can specials be null? Well, let's try backtracking for a minute. So I enabled that. Let's reset this. Let's undo that and undo that. This shouldn't have affected it. So let's try. Let's see if it had anything to do just with me turning this on. Let's turn that back off for a moment. Let's see. So maybe the nullable context is throwing this. No. Still not happy. So somehow a null has snuck into orders, and it's really giving me a headache. So I didn't really change too much with that index page. And it's hitting on something I haven't really touched. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there. Or maybe it had something to do with that null check that I took out of here. Let's try putting that back. Even though I think it was hitting it before that, but we'll see. I don't see how that would help, but there is an access to order state inside here. Maybe it's hitting too early, where it hasn't been set up yet. We'll have a look. No, that is not it either. All right, I'm going to take this back a notch, I guess. Let's do this. Let's take our changes and then how do you do a stash out of Visual Studio without having to drop into the command line? Add them here and then yeah, I guess that's the easiest way. I guess that's not a shortcut in Visual Studio. So we just set this completely back to the way it was when we downloaded it. Let's see what happens when we run it. That's why it's good to have a good, successful run at the beginning. All right, so we're good to go there. What did I do to break it? Let's double check. Let's try going into shared first. We may need to go through this and fix this piece first. See if this causes it. Just that alone is enough to break the app. That one did introduce like 23 warnings. No, that one's fine. So just flipping that bit does not cause the exception. Still feel like it was being cached somewhere, but not seeing evidence that that's true. Oh, it's in the, oh, it's one of those combo button things. Is that what it is? I always miss those. I hate combo buttons in UIs. It's either a button that does something or it's not. I don't know. Put it in a menu somewhere, please. Right, let's try Blazing Pizza Client again. Still don't feel like that's the issue, so... yeah, that's not the issue. I don't know. I don't know. Let's try moving this to a code behind again. It's very strange to have that come up as an error and then not be able to troubleshoot it at all. I wonder if I should have gone in and like deleted bin and all that garbage and tried that. It's been a while since I've had an error that doesn't break and doesn't debug and doesn't make sense. So let's do a code bind. We'll start simple and we'll just move this nonsense to the code behind. And on the code behind, paste those guys in again. There we go. Let's just try that much. Ah, that was it. That's it. Thank you. I had a massive brain fart there. iDrags 1. That is the issue that it wasn't being injected. Dependency injection wasn't happening. It is exactly what it was. I forgot to put these stupid little attributes on here. That's what was causing our null reference exception. Is DI was not being handled at all. No, because it's a property injector. I didn't have the inject attribute. I didn't have the inject attribute on there. Simple stuff sometimes. Eye drags for the win. Pulling the nose up on that train wreck. I don't want to drop my stash. I want to, let's try this. Get rid of these three. Get rid of that. And then bring this back and apply it. And then come back and fix these again. And let's see if that error is gone. Oh, is it really just Tuesday, Thindle? It feels like Friday already. I'm getting really big Friday vibes here. Or maybe it's Monday part 2. It just doesn't feel like a Tuesday. That's an odd choice. Getting an empty list item in there somewhere. So there's like a null list item or something that gets rendered out. That's an oddball one. But that was definitely the error. How is that empty thing being drawn? Let's see what's in there. Okay, there's a period character that's just floating in there that I must have fat fingered into this area. If it's not equal to null, I don't see the period. I see it in the markup. That is a line that never can execute, so we can take it out. There's the period. There it is. Rerun that. Thank you, Mr. Magoo. It was a beauty mark more than just a floating period, wasn't it? There we go. So, yeah. The inject attribute was not there. I would think there, no, I guess, yeah, it wasn't even getting seen by dependency injection, so the usual error I'm used to wasn't being thrown. The required attribute, though, I think there would be a different exception on the required part. But null reference exception got us again. All right. So now we can actually check this, see if it's somewhat error-proofed here by going to the code behind. And in the code behind, let's try changing specials to something that's not quite right. And this time, the whole app shouldn't die because there was an error with the server. Another reason you might get like an error like this if your server goes offline, but the client is still being served. Nobody's ever addressed what's the #1 problem with this app, Mr. Magoo. Is it really doesn't deliver pizza? My next step in fixing this would be to add a button here. Got it in one. I got it on the first guess. I would add a retry button in here. And when you click on the retry button, I would load the data again. In case the server just was temporarily offline or something. Bad connection, who knows. And then to do that, you just kind of take this logic here and kind of move that out to, let's see, extract method. Call that load data, and then back in your index page here on the retry click, we just call and load data there. Why is it not liking this? On click, write a string or delegate. Should be of type. What did it put in here? Private async task, load data. And what's wrong with that? Should be able to just call load data like that, right? What is the deal there? It's just a button click. Do I need event args? What does it have for? I didn't think you had to be that detailed with it. Why is it doing this to me? Load data. I don't think I need event args in here. Or is it because it's running? It's just throwing a fit. Yeah, I don't think I need args in there. It's just maybe because I did it while the app was running. Let's try that again. Try rebuild. Yeah, the app was running, so it was going to throw a fit. The file was kind of in limbo, I guess. It didn't even take my change. Where did my change go? My button's gone. My load data's still there. My button's gone. That's another first. Did I type it in the wrong place or something? Today is just an off day, man. Up is down, down is up. Dependency injection is missing. Load data. Let's see if it, yeah, no errors that time. None that time. These are the easier fixes, I guess. There's still 40-something warning messages to go through in detail. Yeah, so at least we get, and this one came up with a retry button as well. I don't know where that came from, actually. So we have a retry there. Did I put a retry button in the wrong file or something? I don't think I did. Or did I put it in the wrong spot in this file? Oh, I did put one there. Didn't mean to do that. Put it on the wrong line. That's where it went. So now it has the ability to retry if there was a way to actually retry without dealing with that extra S I put in there. And now it should work like normal. There we go. But this just shows you what you're up against when you go from an app that's not using nullability to one that is. We've got, where's all of our warnings? Did I not turn them back on? Let's turn them back on. Bring chaos back into the equation. I type it right there. Okay. I always forget if it's enable or enabled, but it should be enable. And then our error list or warning list got much, much bigger. Then we have to go through all of these objects and decide when they should be null and when they shouldn't be. And then if you look at Entity Framework, it gets even more foggy. There's stuff there that you need to decide if it's nullable or not. Some of it has to come down to, are you planning to use the include keyword, or not keyword, the include method when you're querying or not? Yeah, it gets messy really fast. So a lot of these do not or cannot convert. Since we're explicitly using null here in configure pizza, configuring pizza equals null, that's a very clear signal that this should be nullable, like that. Order pizzas, pizza, add, and if we're able to set this null, this is where this stuff, it's kind of like when async await first got added to the language. Now that I've told the compiler that, yeah, it's definitely nullable because I'm setting it null here, now I'm passing it to the add function of a list. That list of pizza, it knows that these are nullable pizza. So either I keep this list of pizza and it's going to be a list of nullable pizzas, or I have to do something to ensure that we're never going to add a null pizza there. So what I would have to do is configuring pizza here is nullable. I'd have to put a if statement here that says if configuring pizza is null, return, and just don't do whatever this is, or maybe throw an exception here because a null pizza shouldn't be getting that far. But so we're confirming the configuration here, so it really probably can't be null. So we'll just confirm here that it's not. And then when we add it to the collection, it's not null. And then we go ahead and null it out before we exit. And then we don't have to go in and change the collection. That is very true. This is a hard process when you're not the person that created it. Absolutely 100% true. Definitely. So you got to resolve these kind of one at a time and decide what it is that it's doing. And then you also need to kind of watch your error messages too. When you fix one, make sure you don't create like 3 more. So I fixed that, and fortunately it didn't make any more possible null references that I'm aware of. There are some in here though, but not the ones that deal with what I just did. It just bumped back up to 40, so, or there's some duplicates in here. So that, yeah, that's the thing. You gotta rebuild maybe. Maybe rebuild. Getting some duplicates in here. 37 seems to be the, nope, that was back at 45. So I may have actually created more. No, we're getting duplicates again. This is so weird. Compiler warning messages. Let's see. We've got multiple for, I don't know why it's finding more now, but it is. We've got a lot of them in HTTP client scenarios here. And again, like HTTP client returns null because let's see what the definition of HTTP client get from JSON async. Okay, gets into serializes, returns a task of object. It's always a nullable object. It doesn't say what causes that null. I guess it's also possible you don't really get null responses back from a server. I guess it's a possibility you can force that to happen. You can send a null data type across as well, but usually you don't see that. But I guess that's what it's prepared for. So you have to deal with the fact that it's coming back nullable. The best way, I guess, to deal with that is to trap it. And again, it comes down to what Smab said. If you're not the one that built it, so if we looked at the server side of this equation, it doesn't matter if the server never sends a null value back. Just the fact that it's using get from JSON async makes it nullable. And you're always going to have to do something to deal with it. But if we look at areas model, pizza store context, controller. The controller is getting orders. And this is what I was talking about with includes. If we ever start looking into the entity framework side of this, these includes have a lot of weight on nullability. Looking at like orders, for example, these address, delivery location, and pizzas, I guess. I guess delivery location. Let's see. These are coming out of the database. Oh yeah, all of it is. Okay, delivery location, pizzas, all of that comes out of the database, and that has, they're included all the time. So since they're included, they're guaranteed to not be null, I believe. They will at least be empty if there's nothing in the database. So if we look at orders on these pieces here, they're not null, or they're not nullable. So I believe this would at least, well, that's not a collection, so that could be null. It's hard. It is definitely hard. Let's see. So we were looking at orders. We're going to select from orders where order status from order to list. So we're always going to get back a list. We're not going to get back a null value from this. Yeah, it gets a order status back. I was looking to see if there was anything like, this is the proper way to handle this. So if it is null, it should return a not found. If it returns not found, that that is not a success message. So if it returns a not found, I wonder what get from JSON async does. It's going to blow up something somewhere. Let's try some of these out. We'll tinker with this a little bit more, and then I've got to prepare some more presentation materials. Let's create an order. I want to get an order going, and that means I got to register this thing. We'll get a password in there, and then we'll verify that that's our account, and then we can log back into it. And now we have this. We can put an order in, allow it to get my location, send the notifications, whatever it just asked me about. Let's see if I can place that order, and it blew up. It blew up on that, and I didn't touch this page. What is it doing? There is a CORS issue in browser link. What the hell is that? Did not indicate success. Internal server error. So there was an error on submitting an order. Order client, orders client, line 26, place order. I didn't change orders client, so. I don't think I did. Place order. And here's where it failed. So post to JSON async. We tried to post it. This is another one that didn't get trapped. So response error or ensure success status code. This literally does jack squat if it's not trapped in a try catch block. This is just throwing an error in. If anything goes wrong, we're just going to get an exception here, which we did. 500 exception. So place order failed. Where's my controller? I guess I don't have it open anymore. That's what I need to look at. So on the controller, this is something that I broke. We want to actually set up place order is the thing that I want to check. Let's go ahead and drop a pin here. Try this again. Oh, unable to launch browser. That's a fun one. Do I already have it open? I do. Let's kill it. Let's get rid of that browser too, just to make sure we don't have any of those going. Run it again. Get an order going. Log into the order. We'll log into the system, order again. So we're going to put this in our order. I think zip code needs data. And then boom, immediately explodes. Never hit the endpoint. I never hit the endpoint. How did that happen? I thought I got a 500 error. Is this thing not debugging correctly today? Like, what is the deal here? Like, I'm not getting any errors in Visual Studio at all. Unhandled exception, rendering component. Yeah, no kidding. 500 internal server error is not a component error. It's a server error. It had to be returned from the server. Why am I'm on place order. Let's do network. And let's refresh the page. I don't have anything to order. Let's add an item. Place order. Okay, we need the required fields. Okay, it'll accept a dot. Place order. Immediately hits an error. Immediately. Looks like it's hitting it on orders, not post order. Oh, that is the post. My bad. Place order. Orders controller. Get post. That's the only post it has. Why am I not getting a break on any of this? Give me a breakpoint here. Why do I not get breakpoints in Visual Studio with this project? Am I missing something from this project that's not giving me breakpoints? No debugging. Debugging's enabled. I've got diagnostic tools running. Everything's throwing it into the browser console, but nothing is happening in Visual Studio. I'm definitely hitting this controller action based on what I'm seeing here. I called a post on orders. It's authorized. I'm sending a delivery address. Delivery location is null, but that should be fine because delivery location actually gets newed up by the service here because it's fake and it's just simulating it. I've got a pizza order with the ID 0. That's because the database is probably going to create it. ID basic cheese pizza. Data seems to be sound. No toppings. The user is null. I think that's also intended because the user ID comes back from the authentication bearer token or whatever. You don't just pass that around. See, there it is. Get user ID. So that's going to go to the HTTP context and get the claims. I said bearer token, but claims, name identifier. The claims identifier gives that out. So I didn't pass anything in here that doesn't belong. Why am I getting a 500 error? It's actually, it may not actually even be hitting it. Maybe that's why I'm not getting, it should be hitting it. But if something's causing it to not be formed correctly, it might not actually hit the address or the controller action. I get a 401 if I do that because it's not a post, it's a get. .500 is usually internal server error though. System not supported exception. Meta for file validation problem details was not provided by order context. If you're using source generation, whoa, okay. There's the actual error, I guess. Something with serialization? Okay, I don't think this is something I did. So let's take a break from that and look in GitHub issues on that project again and see if somebody's outlined something. Come on. I love my keyboard and hate it at the same time. I always hit the number 4 instead of enter. Issues. Let's see the pull request first. Upgrade, signal art. No, that's not it. Okay. Authentication issue, maybe? That's the one. Using Visual Studio without it. Okay. That actually might be it. I couldn't get authorized view component. No, that's only showed 3 dots. I think the authorization part's working. I'm signed in. There's still something auth related with serialization going on though. Not supported exception. Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC validation problem detail. I'm going to double check this though. Seems like they had an issue and fixed it by looking at orders and setting on orders. Looks like that might have gotten pulled in. Authorized view component. Okay. To the list in order.cs. To the list of what? Okay, so that is in there. Somebody did add that and never completed the, or it looks like that issue's been resolved even though it's still open. Great find. Okay. Ah, there it is. That is the same issue. Is my brain not working today? Where do I add this? Because it looks like it's already there. That's already in. Smabs, it will only hit if all the types match exactly and not nullable at both ends. They're the same type at both ends. It's Blazor with the with a shared class. Oh, I really need to figure this one out because it's going to be probably coming up next week. I don't think it has anything to do with the nullability stuff I just messed with either. Unless you're right about that bit there in the serializer. Now you don't have nullable types in there. That's not it. Dictionary of string is what they say to add to fix this. Dictionary string to the list in order CS. That is it. This is the list they're talking about, right? Well, I don't know. It seems to be broken for me. Well, I'm going to have to try this with, again, going back and just restarting it from scratch. See what works and what doesn't. I want to try to fix any issues that this repo has because I need to use it next week. So I think I'm going to go ahead and sign out and deep dive into this. See if I can fix it, submit a pull request or something, because this is going to be annoying next week if I got to deal with this on a live workshop. So I'm kind of lost on this. It's was not provided for order context. Maybe that's on order context. Public partial class order context. They said to add it to order CS, the list in there. I haven't touched order context, so has something to do with source generation. What a pain. But I gotta run, so while I go down a rabbit hole and try to figure out what this thing is. I will come back in a couple weeks though and let you know what it was.